This show brought to you by Circle of Seven Productions, www.cosproductions.com. Please be sure to subscribe and welcome to our circle.
Hello, everybody. This is Patricia W. Fisher with Readers Entertainment Radio, and it is World UFO Day, which is very exciting. So if you see an unidentified flying object in the air, no, it's a celebration day for that. Also, it's Adopt a Cat Month, and so if you've ever thought about adopting a cat, it's probably a good time to do it. There's plenty of cats out there that would love a good home, especially with so many more people working from home permanently now. I'm sure your little friends would always love to see you, although they do tend to lay across the keyboards and distract you from work from time to time. But that's okay, because they're always going to be hanging out with you. But another thing that's great to hang out with is a really good book, and plenty of really good books. And so I have an author here today that's got 35 books for you to just go ahead and get started reading. And she's talking to me all the way from Australia. That's all the way for me. I'm sure all the way for her, because it's a very long way for either direction. Monique McDonnell has over 35 stories in print, and she's a best-selling author and has a lot of really great stories to tell. Her writing journey began when she was in the 6th grade and wrote about a kookaburra. That article was published in the local paper with her name in the byline and $10 in her hand. Monique knew she'd found something amazing. After working in PR and a series of events led Monique to writing full-time. And then, since then, she's penned the Upper Cross series, the Jeweled Sisters series, Courtyard Romance series, and standalone novels, as well as more series. And her latest book from the Marlin Shore series, Saltwater Wishes, was just released. You can find Monique on her website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. All the links of that are in the write-up of the show. Welcome today, Monique. How are you, my dear?
I'm very well. How are you? It's lovely to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So it's interesting because I always have to keep in mind when I talk to authors in other countries, especially in different hemispheres, we always have to coordinate the time, but not only that, just the seasons, because you may have kids in school, I may have kids out of school, vice versa. So it's always very interesting to coordinate. So thank you, because I know it took us a little bit to figure out when to talk.
Oh, I know. And then the time zones often change, and between when you make a plan and someone goes into daylight saving, somebody comes out. So it's good. It's lovely to be here. And it's already Friday. I'm already calling you from the future.
Yay. So, well, a good book is good in any time zone, in any hemisphere. So I think we've got the goods on that for sure, right? So tell me,
Absolutely.
when you started writing, when you sat down and wrote that first article and it got in the paper, what made you want to sit down and write that story?
I just have always written. So I've got notebooks upon notebook from when I was a kid that I used to kind of run into my room and write a poem or run in and write a story when I came home from school. So I just think it's part of who I am. And I was also a voracious reader from a very young age. So I think storytelling and reading was just my jam, really. It was the thing that made me happy.
Yeah.
And I just kind of kept with it. I think that's probably, obviously there were huge gaps, as there often are in life, but I think it was just, other kids wanted to play sport or dance or whatever, and I just liked writing stories.
Yeah, and good stories are just always wonderful. And they're almost therapeutic, yeah?
I think so. And I think, when you're a kid, don't have a lot of control over your life. You can't decide what you do or where you go, but once you climb into a book, you can go on an adventure, and it gives you that sort of escape and that opportunity to explore things that you can't explore otherwise, really.
Yeah. So tell me, what were your favorites? What were your go-tos as a kid?
So I read in kindergarten, I read every Beatrix Potter book. So they had the whole collection of them, and I read my way through them. And I was a huge Little Women fan, and I still, that still probably is, when asked what my favorite book ever was, that's probably it.
Right.
There was a great series called What Katie Did. It's an older series of books, mind you. Of course, my childhood is quite a long time ago now, but and they were about a family in New York who were Jewish around sort of the turn of the century, or the turn of the 20th century, and that was really fascinating to me. I was living in Sydney, Australia, and I had a very different background. So they were some of the ones that I read and reread. I read a lot of Enid Blyton. I loved the Naughtiest Girl in School books because she was naughty. And also I went to a school that had a boarding school, but that was for sort of the older kids, and so it was quite mysterious what actually happened in that part of the school. So reading that book was like a little window into probably nothing like what was happening in the building, but in my imagination, that's kind of what it was like, I guess. So that was some of my favorites.
Oh, wow. And then, of course, as you got older, the classics.
Yes, yeah. And I think, I read a lot of, I read a lot of books that weren't from Australia, mainly because it was interesting and different. And I really loved all the Astrid Lindgren books, Pippi Longstocking. And then as I got older, yes, I did. Actually, I read a lot of that probably I shouldn't have been reading. My parents were very not supervising my reading material, and kind of didn't feel that censorship of that was important. So I read a lot of, I learned a lot about the world from picking up books that I probably shouldn't have been reading.
You don't know how many people I have interviewed that talk about finding their aunts, their moms, their grandmas, even their dads' secret stash of Harlequin books. And, that they would find them in a box under the bed or the back of a closet, that was a whole other world to read about in those books. So, mix it up a little. Yeah.
And I think also back then, which was, like in the 70s and 80s, I had a fairly, I wouldn't say sheltered, but I came from quite a very Catholic family. And so there was a lot of stuff people weren't talking about. So it was fascinating. You just, I remember being quite shocked when I read it. But, probably better than I learned about them, honestly.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's hard because I know in the States, my husband and I have talked about this a lot, is there's a lot of talk about it, like don't do it and, wait for it, and nobody says what it is. So to read books about actually understanding what it is I think it's important because we all assume that people know the whole mechanics of everything and why things do what they do and how babies are made, and there's a lot of people who have no idea. Like, what? Do what? Adults.
Right, yeah. If you don't explain it, how will anybody know? And it's also that, I just think there were so many things. Like, I remember reading a book, I think it's called Lace, and I can't think of the author now. But, it was...
I know, Shirley Conran. Shirley Conran was the author of Lace, yes.
Oh, there you go. So that was one of the ones I found, and I was like, there's no way. I mean, not even just the sex part, but all sorts of other things I learned from just reading that one book about the world. So, I think that's the wonderful thing about books, that they open the world up to you. And also in a private way, like it's not like sitting in the living room watching it awkwardly with your mum or your grandma.
Right.
You can process information in your own way.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. It's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm reading. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm reading. Oh, good.
Absolutely.
Yay, she's reading. Watching some awful TV show. You're right, I'm not.
I'm not. Absolutely. And also, we had very limited television back then in Australia. We only had 4 TV channels. So we also didn't have a lot of, the television wasn't always great. There wasn't always something on. And you only ever had one TV in the house. So if your dad wanted to watch sports, then that was you. You had to go find something else to do.
That's right, yeah. So did you have the same issue in the house about the knobs disappearing on the TV? Because we would have to have pliers. If the knob disappeared, you had to be able to turn the TV channel. Did you have that issue?
Yes, I think so. And there was no remote, obviously. So it was all very... when we did get a second television, I remember it was a really big deal. we were very excited. It was a tiny little, you could barely see the screen. Actually, it's probably the size of a computer screen when I look back. But televisions were big, so it felt tiny, but we didn't care. Our noses were pressed up against it to watch the Brady Bunch or whatever we were watching.
Right.
And it was great to have that option, not to be sort of watching what somebody else wanted to watch.
I think the first time I really became very aware of Australia, and this is completely cheesy and shows my age, was the Thornbirds.
I knew you were going to say Thornbirds.
Yeah, that was kind of the first big deal. I mean, and of course, plenty of other things since, and then while my kids were small, the Wiggles, so thanks. I know all the songs still. But well, and then of course Crocodile Dundee came out in the 80s, so that was a little bit later, but I remember that and then reading the book and then talking about and of course it's just like any huge massive land, there's different things going on in different places, but it was so fascinating. And of course everyone's talking about going to Australia then, and I'm sure that was I think Paul what was his name, Hogan from Crocodile Dundee said the PR was so good for after Thornbirds and his movie and some others that they were actually saying don't do any more tourism ads because it's like we're done. We have too many tourists, and then they weren't leaving. So he's like, so nobody come to Australia now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the Thornbirds was that first, also from a writing point of view. Colleen McCulloch, who wrote that, was an Australian author, and she got big. Like everybody had read the Thornbirds. It was the book that year that everybody read. And then she got this big TV deal, and that was from all the way in Australia a huge deal. But then, of course, there are very many aspects of that are completely inauthentic and don't even look like Australia.
Right.
So then there was that whole idea that, be careful what you wish for, because once you've sold that, you don't have any control over it, and it doesn't look the way it looks in your imagination.
Right.
And so that was pretty funny. But, it launched a lot of careers, and it did a lot of good things for Australia, and she made a lot of money. So,
Right. Well, and I think, too, like you're talking about the storytelling, I mean, it's that sweeping, dynasty and these different eras of life. And, now, of course, we just do them in all a bunch of different books if we're going to do these things a lot of times. But then it was a big deal. It was like the book was massive. And then the TV deal, and you had 4 nights, I think, like 2-3 hours a night watching this. And I was telling my daughters about it, my kids about it, and they were just like, really? And I'm thinking, well, but now we're kind of going back to that, aren't we? Because it's like that mini-series type feel, but it's on, say, Netflix or Hulu or whatever, and it's limited. So it's not. Instead
of ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what I was going to say is that era, which is actually what I thought I was going to, in my mind, I've always said I wanted to write a sweeping saga across 3 generations. Because that's the sort of book that we read back then, like Barbara Taylor Bradford, I read all of her books. And they were like that. They started when the person was young, and you went higher life with them, and saw their disappointing children and their broken marriages, and then they rose back to the top. And, that was what you read, and they were big fat books that took, a whole week to get through. And they were really satisfying. But we don't write that way so much anymore.
Right. Well, and it's broken up. So, I mean, you still have the sagas. They're just kind of broken up and in smaller chunks, I guess, how we can do it that way. Yeah. So let's get to your latest, because you have, 4 series, 5?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I mean, it's a couple of multi-author series as well, so that sort of, adds to the number. Yeah, so this my most recent series is just, at the moment, is a trilogy. and I just released the third book. So that's exciting.
So tell me about the Marlon Shore series. Yeah.
So it's a series about three brothers whose father dies. It's set on the coast in the Carolinas, and their father dies, and they're all estranged, and he leaves them a marina. They have to stay for a year in order to fulfill the terms of the will, and so each book is a different brother's story. And I wrote it weirdly, well, not weirdly, but we spend a lot of time. My husband's obsessed with fishing, and we have a boat that we take out on Sydney Harbour, and I spend a lot of time on boats and a lot of time on the water, and a lot of time when I'm like, I really want to be writing, but I'm on this boat, so I'm going to try and write on this boat. And so I thought, how can I combine those two things? And so I decided to write a series with boats in it. And that's sort of how this came about. And I've done long series, but I hadn't done anything that was just sort of free and finite. And I have other plans for the world that I built, the town of Marlon Shores, but I just thought, let's just do something that's the three, and then see how you go. You can add other books in later. But because I'm committed to a few multi-author series and things, I didn't want to leave people waiting another year for another book. I wanted to have something that was sort of ended, if that makes sense, complete.
Right.
And then if more books come, they come. Yeah,
so you have So you have Saltwater Song as the first book, and then you have Saltwater Tears as the second, and the Saltwater Wishes. So that just came out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have right. So you have that series is done, and then you're got some other stuff coming as well.
Yeah. So my Upper Crust series, which is probably my most popular series, I'm doing the ninth book of that, and it's coming out in July. And it is throughout that series, there's a sort of a not so nice character. It's Feral Romances, and she's kind of the nemesis, I guess, in a lot of the books. And she gets to come up in this book. People have been asking me to write it for like 18 months. But it's a Christmas book, but it's coming out for Christmas in July, which is quite a big thing in Australia, but I understand not so much in the rest of the world, because we had World 2020. And I just couldn't get it out in time for last Christmas. So I'm like, I don't want to wait a whole year, so I'll put it out in July. And so that's coming out next month. And that's kind of the end, I think, of that series, although I do have an idea for a spin-off, so that may happen next year.
So that's Any Way You Wish It, and that's from the Upper Crust series, book 9, and that comes out July 13th. So you've got all these different series, and you've got novellas that you do with multi-authors groups. So how do you keep, what is your method of keeping all of your universes separate and consistency? I mean, how do you story Bible all this?
So I have, in terms of how I know what I'm doing, I'm the queen of the whiteboard. I've got two very large whiteboards in my office, 2 columns of what I'm going to do. And sometimes I even do it. And in terms of story Bible, I am blessed with a pretty good memory. I have to say that's very helpful. And I also have an editor who keeps really, really good sheets of the stuff. She has her own grids of all my characters and all of that stuff that she is very thorough with, because sometimes I'm not as good at that as I should be. So sometimes, the name of the person that ran the whatever shop, sometimes I'm going to get that wrong. If it's being when someone went into the shop, but she knows. But overall, with the Upper Crust series, I just feel like the characters are my friends. So, I don't really have to think too hard about them. If I'm going to sit down to write a scene and people from book 3 are in the book 9, it's okay, because I just think about them and they're there, I find the multi-author series ones are much harder because, you've got other people's input and other people's, I've just written this thing into my book. You need to make sure you include it. So that's a whole different level of crazy. But for my own ones, I don't find it too difficult. I do use now a program called Plotter, and it helps you sort of keep track of all of your characters. And it's really good, and it helps you. You can use it also to plot your book, but then you have like a story Bible or a character sheet off to the side that you can go back and cross-reference. And I have found that to be pretty helpful as well.
Oh wow! And what is the name of that again?
Plottrr, Plotter. Or it might be Plottr. I think it's Plottr, no E. So Plotter without the E.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Plotter. All right.
Yeah, and it's a good program.
Okay, so you're finishing up. You finished up the Marlin Shores, and then you thinking this might be the end of the Upper Crust series coming out next month.
Yeah.
And then you've got. I mean, do you just have art like your schedule filled and just constantly? I mean, how far are you booked out for projects due?
Interestingly, yes, traditionally, but 2021, I'm just trying to finish everything. So I feel like it would be really, I think I published my first stuff. I think I published my first book in 2012. So it's a long time, and I would like to finish this year with nothing kind of unfinished, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then a fresh slate for 2022. So I have one more book coming out, which I don't think has been announced, but we won't tell anyone, in the No Brides Club series, which is a multi-author series as well this year. And then after that, I don't really exactly know what I'm going to do, which is very unusual for me because since 2012 I've known exactly what I was going to be writing next. But it sort of feels like the right thing for me to do for myself. And I also write under I now have a new shared pen name that I'm writing some sports romances with another author.
Okay.
And so that's probably going to be my focus for the next part of 2021 as well. And then I'm just going to have a sit down and think about what would be exciting for me to write next. I think is probably what is my passion project to do next. And that might be, the spin-off from the Upper Crust series. It might be more Marlin Shores books. It might be something completely different. But I think I need to get some of these things finished so then I have the brain space to really think about that.
What is the most difficult thing in writing multi-author books? Like, and for anyone who doesn't know what that is, so it's like everybody says, okay, we're going to do a theme, like we're going to have 10 people that are friends from college, and they're all going to go on a weekend getaway or something, and everyone has a character, and so but we have to see what each story is, and it all has to work. How do you? What is the hardest part about all that?
I think for me, so I've done 3 like that. So I did The Oceanic Dreams, which was all set on a cruise ship. And they've mostly been unpublished now. They come out in 2019. I've done the No Brides Club series, which is a group of girls who all live in New York and say, I'm focusing on my career, not my love life. And then, miraculously, things don't go to plan. And I also have 3 books in the Cinnamon Bay romance set in the town of Cinnamon Bay. So I think the most challenging part is really just dealing with different people's personalities and styles of how they get things done. Not so much the writing part, it's just if you write ahead, if you're really organized, and then somebody else is very last minute, then they want to change things and you're like, go change it now. So there's that. Some people are really need to know every single detail of something, even if they're not going to include it in a book. And other people are like, it'll be fine, or the detail's there and they forget to read it. So I think that is the challenge. And I think if anyone is thinking of doing that sort of writing, you really need to be cautious about who you pick and choose to work with, because that can make you a little bit crazy if you are forth. And so for me, I'm not doing any more of these. Actually, I'm committed to doing one in 2022. I had stepped back from doing them for 2 reasons. One, because I felt like with everything else going on at the moment in the world, and we're all juggling things in a very different way, that was a layer of stress I just didn't need in my life. And the other reason is I'm not sure that my readers have enjoyed those books as much. I'm not sure that they've wanted to read books by other people. Some have, but not all of them. And so I'm not sure that I'm actually giving my readers what they wanted anyway. So for more stress and maybe less reward, that doesn't make sense.
Well, and it's also a good way for authors to get other exposure with other groups. Like if you like this author, you might like my books, and so it does have to be rather similar. It would be more difficult to have someone who's like a super sweet writer with a super saucy writer, and that's sometimes it's hard for readers to know when they're reading an anthology. But it's also great because you get such a cross section of stories and storytelling styles. If you're trying to start a new genre or read a new genre, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think it depends. Like some readers love it, so I definitely have found new readers that way. But I know there are people who've said to me, "Oh, look, I'm not really interested in reading by the others," and I'm sure those other authors have had the same experience. Amazing worlds that people are writing in, and they're really fun, and I read them. I've read a lot of the Smarty Pants romance books by Penny Reid that are all set in her universe, and so it can be really fun. And look, for me, when I think I had a year where I was just feeling isolated. So when I was offered a few group projects, I was like, yeah, this is perfect. This will give me connection with people. And it certainly did that. And I've met some amazing authors, and I've had some really, really fun times doing them. But it's just harder. And I think now, having written 35 books, I kind of have a really good system that's easy for me to sit down and just write my books and immerse myself in them. And I think that's just a better way for me moving forward.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a whole different. You're right. It's a whole different vibe to it. It's just like group projects versus you have to write this or do this project on your own, and it's all it's a very different vibe, and it can be just a tremendous amount of work, and it can also be a great project, and it can also be a complete disaster. I mean, sometimes you just don't know.
You don't know. And look, so the Oceanic Dreams series, that was just super easy for me. That I had said, look, I can't be the person who runs everything in this. So I was pretty hands off on that one. The No Brides Club's through a publisher, so that's different again. The Cinnamon Bay one is very immersive, and it was a great experience. And I've actually, one of the authors from that group is the one I'm co-writing under a pen name with. So, there's always great things that can come out of these things. And you learn so much. I think that the other benefit of doing them is that shared knowledge. The author world, especially if you're an indie author, you have to be very adaptive, and things change very quickly. So if you've got other people to help you negotiate that change, then that is a really, really positive thing.
And I think that's important, like what you're saying, because writing is not anything people go into and just know everything to do. And that's not just the actual structure of how to write a story, but the business side of it, and then how important it is for us to help each other with that, because there's plenty of people out there waiting to take someone's money to say they're going to do something with their stories, and they're not. But you have a site called Get Social right now for authors, and you cover a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah, and the thing for me is, because I have been doing this for quite some time, I have a lot of people come to me, especially, when they're starting out, and they're like, what should I do about this? What should I do about this? And it's a little bit about, it kind of links back to what we were saying when we were saying, do this, don't do this, do it, don't do it, and you haven't explained what it is. And it's exactly the same for publishing. There's so many steps to follow, and there's so much jargon, and there are so many people who want to rip people off, which I just can't stand. And so I obviously I'm always happy to talk to people and give them a hand, but if they're going to need more structure and ongoing help, then that's what Get Social right now is about, is helping people to get themselves launched. And I'm also a big believer that you can pay somebody to do something, but you really need to understand what you're asking them to do, because otherwise you get ripped off. They might say it takes 10 hours and it really takes half an hour. How would you know? Then once you understand the steps involved in something, you can make the decision that that's something you want to put your time and energy into. You're prepared to pay someone. Or you might go, it's not as hard as I thought. I'll do that part myself. And there's just so many steps that, there's so many places people can get tripped up and stall. Like, I know people who've written books and they're like, well, that's great. I'm going to self-publish. I'm going to be indie. And then they open the Amazon KDP platform, look around and don't put their book up because it's too hard. And you're like, well, that could fix that. That's easy. But there's that's the first hurdle, really. If you can't get past that because it overwhelms you, that's really unfortunate. And the other thing is, a lot of people who write are not necessarily tech savvy. There's so much tech involved. And I wasn't tech savvy. I didn't know half the things that I probably needed to know and that I've learned along the way. So if you can cut that time out for other people, then that's kind of, I always think, a nice thing to be able to do.
Well, and there's just all these little details that are hard. And, the big one is there's a lot of people I've talked to over the years. They're like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm a tech writer. I'm an English teacher. I'm a whatever. And then that's great, but you really should not edit your own books. And whether you go through a publisher or you self-publish, the big thing I always tell everyone is make sure whatever you're putting out there is a really good, the best quality product you can, because readers know what they want, and if you put something out there that's kind of crap, they're going to tell their friends, and you're not going to sell that many books. And I think that's something people are like, oh, self-publish, well, that's easier. It's like, well, not so much.
Not really. Not really. And I also think the reality is now, and that self-published books are indistinguishable from books by traditional publishers in many respects. Like the good ones, you can't tell the difference. And that's what you should be aiming for. And so if you've got a beautiful cover and it looks very schmick, and then people open it up and are disappointed, that you don't want to open the gift box and discover you've been given an old apple. And it's exactly the same. If it's packaged to be professional, then that's what you want in the middle, and you just won't get people back. I mean, that's the issue, that you want people to read your next book, and they will not do that if they're disappointed. And I think that's definitely something that's changed. Back in the wild west days of early indie publishing, people could put up things of less quality, and they did get read because there wasn't as many choices. But that's definitely not the reality today.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because we've all done it. We've all heard this. Every writer out there, it's like someone says, "Oh, well, I've always wanted to write a book. How hard can it be, right?" But those are the people that haven't done it. So the ones that finally do sit down, they're like, "Oh my God, this is impossible." You're like, "Yes, it is."
When I started writing seriously, I did a course which was called First Page to First Draft. So it was a year-long course, and we went every Wednesday to the Writers' Centre here in my state, and we had a tutor, and we were all supposed to have the first draft of our book finished, in December. And I was the only person in the class who had their whole first draft finished. And that was with all that help and, teamwork, and lots of people were close, but it's just not that easy. And especially your first book, I think, it's always a project of the heart. You're always really, the characters are real to you. You don't want to do them a disservice. you have it pictured in your mind and that's not coming on the page. Like, there's just so many aspects that can hold you up. It's not easy to write. It's just not. And it's not even easy to write, like, let alone rewrite it, and redraft it, and edit editing. Even that first messy draft is really hard to get down on the page.
Yeah. Just keep pushing through, because it is hard, because you're like, oh, this is crap. It's like, yes, it's crap, but get the story out, whether you write it or, whatever, put it in the computer. Dictate it, whatever. It makes a huge difference. Just to, like, it's almost like, I'm going to make something and it stays theoretical the whole time, and then you finally sit down to do it and it's an absolute mess because you've not actually put any, you've not made notes or outlines or really know where anything's going. It is a process. So for you to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write this, and you've got 35 books in the past, 12 years, 13 years? I mean, that's a strong, steady pace. A lot of people wouldn't even consider that. But, I mean, it's fabulous because, I mean, it's obvious you've got a good groove going. So, and that means I'm sure you're just like,
So one of the things I'm always fascinated with writing is people who say, I haven't got an idea. And I'm like, oh, that's not my problem. Too many ideas. Which thing do you write next is the problem, not, I can't think of anything to write. But I think that gets easier with time. And I think also when you are writing in your own series, I always have characters in a book that I know are going to be in the next book. And I'm already thinking about them and telling myself to stop thinking about them before I get to this. So I think that, for me, that's been, that's just how my brain works. But also I have gone from being a pantser, someone who doesn't plot, to being someone who does plot. And that has definitely made me a faster writer. I don't know if I'm... And I don't do it every book. Some books I don't. I just sit down and write. But if I've got a tight deadline or I've committed to something, and I want to make sure I get there, then if I pre-plot it, it's definitely quicker writing for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's once you get your groove going. But then when you start a new series, I would guess that, well, I guess it depends on the project, because some projects just really just pour their guts out, and then other projects they just like, come on, give me something here.
Yeah, and I actually like starting new things. And I always think of my characters as like being friends, and I only write characters. So I used to write, before I was published, I tried writing literary fiction, and I always got depressed halfway through the book, and I was like, I don't want to hang out with these people, they're miserable. So when I started to write, chick lit and romance, I aimed to write characters that I would want to be friends with or actually spend time with if they were real people, and they are kind of real people to me. So when I start a new series, I feel like I'm making new friends. I'm like, I get to learn all these things about them. So I enjoy that part, but I know for a lot of people that is challenging. And also a lot of readers don't really want you to start a new series. They want you to stay with the characters that they already know and love. So that is a bit of a challenge for writers, I think, now, with so much emphasis on writing a series. To keep your creativity going, you have to do new things. You can't always just keep, in the same space. So that's kind of an interesting conundrum. What does the reader want, and what can you write and deliver that will be satisfying?
What character have you not written about that your readers have asked you to write about?
So I hadn't written about this. I hadn't written about this character from the Upcrust series because I don't find it's funny. I don't really like the idea of giving someone their comeuppance. It's just not kind of my personality. I'm just like, let that be over there, do their thing. So I have resisted writing that story, but I am now doing it. That's probably the main one. Yeah, that's probably the main one. So I am now doing it. And it does make sense. But my readers genuinely the ones that have reached out to me have asked for more Marlon Shaw's books and have said, please keep writing the Uppercrust series. That's what they want me to write. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, making that character that you weren't so sure deserve their story, make sure that they deserve their story in the right way. And that's, again, that pulling that thread to make it all fit. Yeah.
The characters, anyway, the guy in the male character, you know, left his girlfriend for another woman in like book 2 of the series. And so I have to write his character. So I have to make him redeemable. And that's fine. You know, he was young and they weren't married and he was stupid. But, you know, we've sort of, it's hard if you've made someone, not the bad guy, I wouldn't say, but, you know, he's made some choices that were not smart in several books. So now to make him likable and to give him a redemption story and then give the female that he did choose, you know, her comeuppance is probably not what I normally write. So it's a little bit challenging for me. It's a little bit fun as well. But, yeah, it's an interesting twist on what I normally do.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So we're about out of time, but I wanted to tell everybody they can find you on your website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. Your next book comes out next month on the 13th from the Uppercrust series. And then you've got a couple of other projects coming. And then, you know, 2022 is full of possibilities, right?
The clean slate.
So new beginnings and all sorts of new possibilities, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, and please come back in the future and talk to us some more.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Absolutely. I talk so much.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
It's an absolute pleasure.
You know, I've had friends on, and you know, a couple of friends of mine are just really great when we're sitting there talking. And one of them came on the show, and I was like, oh, no, it'll be great. She's just going to talk, and it's going to be wonderful. And I would ask her a question, and it was just like, yeah. I'm like, oh, my God, what is she doing? Like, what? Now you're not going to say anything? So, yes, no, I love it. And I love that when writers are excited about what they do because it can be very solitary. So some people, you know, they write because they want to tell the story, but it's not necessarily their passion per se. So, yeah, no, I totally love it when writers love what they're doing.
I can't imagine doing it if you didn't love it. There are so many easier pathways, easier ways to make money, like a million other things you could do if you didn't love it. I can't imagine.
Yeah, storytelling's just one of those wonderful things that we get to do, and I wouldn't take it over anything else.
No, me either.
So, for everybody who loves good stories, check out Monique McDonnell. She has got plenty for you to read. You can find her again, like I said. All the links are in the write-up of the show of all her social media, and get on her newsletter because it's super cute. And she's got tons of information on there. Plus, she's got really good information for anybody who's thinking about wanting to write, and a lot of solid places that you can check out. That's all under the About section on her website. So, thank you again, Monique, for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And this has been Patricia W. Fisher with Readers Entertainment Radio. And just a heads up, everyone, please, if you haven't and you can, please go get your COVID vaccine. Let's get this taken care of so we can all just relax a little bit. So take care, everyone, and keep on reading.
This show brought to you by Circle of Seven Productions. www.cosproductions.com. Please be sure to subscribe and welcome to our circle.